Hello out there, YouTube land. How we all doing tonight? We are the MCU's Bleeding Edge, and we are here discussing the 4th episode of Andor. So if you're a fan of Star Wars, you might recognize Cassian Andor from the film Rogue One, which is basically about the stealing of the Death Star plan so that they can destroy the first Death Star in the amazing first film, New Hope. So, anyways, we are going to be discussing the 4th episode tonight, and it's actually called Aldhani. I believe that's how you pronounce it. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's what you call it. But anyways, we're going to be discussing that episode tonight. As you can see, we have a wonderful panel, which consisted of Stacy from the Real Shit podcast. She keeps dropping in and out because she's having audio issues. So hopefully she'll pop back up. But she's a really great asset to the awesome team. And we also have my lucky co-host here who loves Restream so much, Mr. Jeff S. TrueKnowledge. How are we doing, Jeff?
Oh, man. I am as humble. I am more humble than ever.
Humble He's pie. The humblest people. He is the humblest. Super humble.
Hey, after those super sticker fucking deals, whatnot. I'm so humble. I don't even know what to do.
Oh yeah, that is true. That is true. And like I said, we have Stacy from Some Real Shit podcast with us tonight. Can you hear us? And are you with us, Stacy?
I can hear you. I don't know if I'm with you.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you can hear us at least. That's good to know. All right. So like I was saying, we're going to be discussing Andor episode 4, which is called Aldhani. And this could be really interesting. It's going to be fun to talk about. I mean, there's quite a bit that goes on in this episode, so we're just going to get right into it. So basically, the episode starts off right where it left off in the last episode. We're once again introduced to Andor on the spaceship he left along with Stellan Skarsgård's character, who I believe it goes by the name of, let me double check here, Luthen. I believe that is his name. I always forget his name for some reason, but I always just want to call him Stellan Skarsgård because that's such a cool name. Mm-hmm. But anyways, we are approached by them. They're together on a ship. They have just escaped from the Imperial people. And as they're on the ship, of course, that's when kind of Andor's like looking around. He's kind of like messing with things on the ship and stuff. And that's when Luthen comes out and starts to talk to him and discuss about what's going to happen. He's like, now you have some options. Basically, I could drop you off somewhere and you keep running from the Imperials and not deal with your situation. Or you could come with me and serve a further purpose to help us that might actually inject some real damage to the Imperial army or to the Empire, basically. And so, like, Andor's kind of like, well, why should I do that? You should just drop me off. And, he kind of, Luthen kind of gives him kind of some, ideas and stuff like that, well, you could do this. You could try to kill me and take over the ship and all this kind of stuff. But, basically he's like, you'd be helping with a bigger cause here. And I think you should do it. And, I really need your help. And basically Andor agrees to it, is pretty much what happens there. And so before we go on from that, so what I want to get your guys' kind of thoughts on this process here of how this episode begins. Just what were your thoughts on that sequence there with, Luthen and Andor? Was there anything that you found interesting or didn't like about it? Did you think that this was a great way to start the episode? And just kind of give me your thoughts on how it kind of connects to the end of the last episode, starting with you, Jeff.
Sometimes it may be good, sometimes it may be shit.
That's it. You got it. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm joking, folks. No, honestly, you like that, Stacey? No, but basically, I thought it was kind of interesting because for me, the biggest part that I took out of was the whole deal where Cassian's kind of like trying to act like a hard ass and all this shit and whatnot and trying to hang with Luthen and whatnot, right? Like, like he can obviously tell that Luthen is like above him essentially, right? He's not just older than him. You know what I mean? Like he legit, like, obviously, like, is at a different level as far as, like, you know, knowing what the fuck's going on. You know what I mean? Like, you know, handling his business and shit and whatnot. Being on top of everything. He's always got like a backup for everything and whatnot, right? A plan. He's ahead of everything. I think in a way he's almost kind of like jealous of him, or maybe like feels kind of like insecure in a way with him. You know what I mean? Like, I think Cassian's kind of used to being the man, you know, like in a way. And so at that point, he goes and shoots his mouth off about how, you know, I fought in Mimbom at age 18 and all this shit and whatnot or whatever, like in the war or whatever. And Luthen's like, nah, you were a cook. Like, you didn't do shit. You know, you didn't fight anybody. You know what I mean? So just to be clear, like, you know, that never happened. So that was dope. That was awesome. I love that. Because like at that point, what that basically told me was essentially Luthen is so networked. Like, he's so connected, right? And like we've talked about this, Stacey, last episode. We think that there could even be a connection between Luthen and even like the Cassian family, the Andor family potentially going back. You know, like he may even know family members. For all we know, he may even know. Is it Marv Cyber?
Maeve.
He may even know Maeve. We just don't know yet because we haven't seen them in the same scene yet. So we don't know if they know each other. But I think he does, probably, if anything. You know, it would make sense that he would know her, I would think. And so bottom line, he knows his whole backstory. He knows everything about Cassian. Like everything. Everything he's done, all of it. Like, I think he basically knows all of it. So he's been putting his time in. Like, he's been researching. He's been putting effort and time in to find Cassian Andor for a minute. And, like, really put his time in. He didn't just, like, randomly decide to recruit Cassian, like, out of chance or whatever and whatnot. He put a lot of effort and thought into this, right? And that just kind of shows you who Luthen is in a way. Like, he don't play around. You know what I'm saying? Like, when he does shit, it's based off something tangible. And like, and beyond that, I just felt like it was really enlightening in a way, in terms of us not knowing that much about Luthen at all, but having, suspecting sort of that he's sort of this bigger figure. That to me really denoted like, okay, again, this is a big universe, right? We don't know where Luthen's from. Yeah, he knows everything about him, right? And I think that kind of put Cassian in his place.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I definitely think that that Andor was definitely putting off like kind of like a tough guy persona, most definitely, and that definitely Luthen definitely kind of put that foot down. It was like, you're gonna listen to me, basically. So I totally agree there. Stacey, so what were your thoughts on the Luthen Andor conversation? Basically, him asking to help him out with this cause, and what were your thoughts on that sequence there, and kind of your thoughts on how that the last episode ended and flowed right into this episode?
I feel like I thought I swore on the recap that Maeve and Lutheran had met at one point. Like they were walking together and they were talking. So I might have missed that or misinterpret that, but I'm pretty sure that was her. But anyways, the interaction between the two of them is pretty. I mean, my perception of it was Andor was kind of like, you know what, I really don't know you very well. I'm not sure if I want to trust you because I am running from the Imperial guards. Life is pretty testy for me right now. So like, I've just killed 2 men and I need to go. So how are you going to help me? And he's basically like, I'm just going to do the bare minimum just to survive. And I think it was cool that Lutheran was able to persuade him. I think there was one part where he was like, it's better to eat and steal their trinkets. And he was just like, that's just so, so little on such a little scale. So when Luthen had basically said, why, I think, what did he say? It was like, why go towards something real? Go for something big and something real versus what you're trying to do is go take off little bits and pieces of something that's like not even worth anything. So I think it was a matter of persuasion, and that was his goal. And I do believe that he may have gotten some information from him from his past, because we still don't know too much about Luther and if he's even connected with the mom, because his adopted mom, she was a big part of his life. So we don't know if that she was the, he was preparing for it. He could have done so many things in his life, but he still stuck to, what he does. And I think Lutheran probably saw that he was capable of doing the stuff that he can, to help out the rebellion.
Well, certainly, definitely, yeah. I definitely think there's a lot more to Luthen than meets the eye. Most definitely, I think that we're only getting a smidgen of what he is, because as we saw later on in the episode, we can kind of see there's several sides to Luthen, and that there's a lot more. So, just like what Jeff was saying, there's definitely that connection, I think, through Maeve. There's definitely a connection to Andor's past. There's definitely a connection probably to somewhere in the Imperial office, probably too as well, that we'll probably learn about. I definitely feel there's lots of connections, and I feel this sequence did a good job of kind of indicating there's a lot more to Luthen than we're getting, but he is trying to do a good cause, most definitely. So thank you. All right, so after we're reintroduced to them, that's when we are introduced to Coruscant. Now, everyone's pretty much familiar with Coruscant. That's where like all the like people that are political nature and stuff like that. That's where they all go to talk about the different, solar systems and stuff like that. We saw that very prominently in the first three, the prequel films in the Star Wars series. And Coruscant is kind of like the capital where all the senators and presidents and stuff like that go. And so, and of course, in Coruscant, what do you think would be there? The Imperial, Imperial people, the Imperial officers that are a part of the Empire. And so we go there, we're introduced, we see this Imperial officer walking towards a big building. And after it shows her, it all of a sudden goes inside a big room where there's a whole bunch of Imperial officers sitting down, and they're all discussing Imperial duties that are going on, and stuff like that. Basically discussing, why is this not getting done? Why, this kind of thing, and why did this happen over here and stuff like that. And so we have this kind of interesting and really cool little, kind of insight into kind of more about the Imperial officers that we really don't, we really haven't seen in any of the movies. So that was kind of interesting that they had this whole sequence, and you could kind of see who kind of was kind of the main head Imperial officer there. And then you kind of had these other side ones that were that one gal that we were introduced to walking into the office. You could see she had more on her mind that she wanted to speak, but she didn't, and stuff like that. But we got that really great sequence where it shows that stuff, and which was really well done. And so after that happens, then that we jump back to Andor and Andor and Luthen. They have just landed on a planet. They haven't said the planet's name yet, I don't believe. Oh yeah, it's dead. Which is Aldhani. Aldhani. We discover this new planet that we haven't seen. And they have just landed, and basically Luthen says to Andor, okay, I'm going to go talk to another person that's a part of our crew. You should stay here to Andor, and because she's probably not going to be happy about you being here and this kind of stuff, and I got to talk to her and kind of, get her to, agree to have you come a part of this because we need you. And so he, basically he ends up leaving the ship and goes, and we see kind of this gal walking up towards the ship, and that happens to be Val. Or Vel. I think it's Vel, actually, because it's spelled V-E-L, but I swear they call her Val. So I think that's funny that they have an E in there and not an A. But anyways, so Val approaches, and Luthen comes out, and he walks up to her, and they start discussing what's going on, that he's arrived, and, basically he explains to her that he's got another crew member who's going to be basically, helping and assisting with this 3-day project that they're working on to, steal whatever they're going to steal from the Imperial to help, basically on their quest to be able to take out the Empire. And, basically he says that he's a hired mercenary. He's paying him 200 credits and stuff like that, or 200,000 credits or something like that. And, basically he's like, even though he's a hired mercenary, he's still going to help us. And basically, tells Val he's going to be a part of the crew and he's going to be helping. And she doesn't really like it, but she agrees to it. So before we move past that, let's talk a little bit about the Imperial officers section and about that introduction to Val. So starting with you, Stacy, what were your thoughts on the Imperial officers there in that room discussing all the things and kind of their interactions? And also, what were your thoughts on the introduction to Val? And what do you feel, is she going to be a huge part, do you feel, of the rest of the series? Do you think she's an interesting character? What were your thoughts on her and kind of her interaction with Luthen as well?
They're all going to be a huge character in this, because they're kind of bringing to play off of the old ones, because we've lost we lost one, because so we kind of lost what's her name, the one that Tim, the one that died. So we won't probably see her until like later on. And the whole situation with the Imperial, it's just
Tim was a man.
Huh?
Tim was a man.
Tim was a man?
Yeah. That's okay. No, I forgot. No,
no, I know Tim was a man.
Oh, okay. No, I know men and women are the same thing now.
I'm saying the other character, Tim's girlfriend, I forgot her name.
Ah.
Yeah, she wasn't a part of this equation, though, but okay.
No, she wasn't, but we're taking her out, and now we're bringing in new players now. So I feel like this is an introduction to the new players. We took Carr out of there, and we took all of his allies, and now he has new allies. He has new enemies now. So it's an introduction into a new thing and how they're going to work together. And you could see from everybody, especially, I guess her name is Gandhi. Oh, Grandy, who is the blonde. You could see she's going to be another key player, she's like Karn, but like a female version of it. You know what I mean? If they could put that role, that's what I think. That's what they brought her into. You could tell like they're all one of those, like, I want to say they're so structured, so they got to make sure everything's. And so when they were talking about what had happened on Ferrex and stuff like that, you notice she was the first one to jump in and started looking into it, when the rest of them were just kind of like, oh yeah, that's just a normal day and blah blah blah. So you can see she's a key player in that. And then for Cal, is it Cal? I don't like Kale, but Cal.
You talk about the new gal?
Oh, Val.
No,
Val.
Val.
Sorry. Val. Still trying to figure out which is the best way to say her name. I think she's gonna make a good ally. She's gonna help out, and she's gonna step in. And I know she's probably like kind of hesitant. Of course, everybody will be hesitant with a new person and a new face or whatever. But I think she's going to be one of the big helpers. And it's weird how Luthen has some sort of command over. He has just this way of persuasion, which kind of explains further on down the line, but he has like this art of persuasion. So he managed to get her because she seemed like she was already like, when she walked up, she's like, no, absolutely not. You know what I mean? We're not doing this, but she still managed to do it.
Completely. Yeah, most definitely. All right. Thank you. Jeff.
That's my opinion on that.
Awesome. Thank you. Jeff, your thoughts, sir. Same question.
Well, as far as the like the Imperial Roundtable discussion, you know, and basically, I guess, you know, this another sort of like new type of like I guess scene or setup, you know, of us being, you know, being shown the Imperial forces, you know, like they're, you know, doing their deeds, their business, going about their business, their structure, and sort of how they go about things, like their inner workings, how things work, how the politics work, how the business works, how, you know, sort of, I guess, like, you know, what the personalities are like, right? How the structure is, how they talk to each other, you know what I mean? Like in different circumstances, right? This like Imperial Security Bureau Council meeting or whatever it was like a lot more serious and like you know, hardcore, like with a really intense tone after Ferrex, right? You know, and what went down there in episode 3, then like what we dealt with in episode 1, right, where we had you know, basically you know, like Cyril Karn kind of just, you know, I mean, and like some of the different like Imperial you know, Premor forces kind of just like half-assing stuff, like not even caring about stuff, you know, lazy, whatever, just like kind of bantering and everything about their jobs. This was some serious shit, like, you know what I mean? And now I did not completely grasp if the entire premise of the you know, like the council, you know, the Imperial Security Bureau meeting was directly as a result of Ferrex and what went down there with, you know, that incident. I couldn't tell if that was the whole deal or if this was like actually more of like a actual type of routine meeting that they have regularly, probably, you know, because again, they do things almost like in the corporate way, if anything, right? You know, slash militarily slash corporate in a way to me. So at that point, you know, essentially, this is, of course, you know, I think this is Palpatine, right? Where, you know, where this goes down, I think, you know, the Palpatine Empire or whatever, right? Where this council, isn't that where this meeting takes place?
Well, I mean, yeah, they're a part of Palpatine's empire. Yes, this is before New Hope happens.
Yes. Okay. So, you know, and of course, you know, just to be clear, this law enforcement and intelligence agency is responsible for keeping the citizenry firmly under the regime's control. Right? That's as they're describing it on, you know, Wikipedia, and it's generally scary and nasty. So either way, you know, they definitely look more professional. You know, for anything, like they're more like well kept. They're better dressed. They look sharper than what we've seen from, like, for instance, the Premor forces. And essentially, if anything, it kind of reminded me of the actual Rogue One film. Sort of like how, you know, these Imperial forces, like, they reminded me more of, like, you know, some of like the stuff from Rogue One in terms of how these type of characters work, their personalities, their demeanors, very serious about their business. And basically, I'm assuming, now I don't know because I haven't gone ahead. I haven't looked, I haven't read, but I have to assume that the supervisor, Deidre Miro, right, is essentially going to end up being a main character in the series. She has to be, Because again, if not, then I seriously messed up with the thumbnail for the show because I'm going to look like an asshole. If this is her last appearance, I'm going to be screwed. With my planning here and everything. But either way, no. I basically I get what Stacey's saying. She's like sort of like you could link her to Cyril, but she's not Cyril. She's actually about her business. Like she's not like she's actually serious about her shit. I don't think she's just trying to like move up the ranks or whatever and whatnot. She takes her job seriously, right? Like she's dedicated to the Imperial force and the mission. She's down for the cause. And at that point, I like her. I do. I do. I mean, she may be a villain or whatever. I don't care. I like villains sometimes. I do. They can be some of the most interesting characters in these series sometimes. Think Thanos, right? In Infinity War and Endgame. I think Thanos was awesome. He made Infinity War. But so basically, I guess all I really say is that I kind of enjoyed seeing the scene with that and everything and whatnot. I like the Imperial scenes. I like them rolling in more characters. I think it's good. It's nice to see more them flushing out more of these characters that we're going to be having in the series regularly, so we can kind of get to know them a little bit and whatnot and get a feel for them. I always like seeing new characters pop up that are going to end up being legitimate characters. And as far as like my first impressions go, basically, yes, Dix is hot without question. But as far as like my impression goes, I think Deidre Miro seems like really freaking hardcore. Like she could be like a real player. Like I would not mess with her probably compared to Cyril. I don't see her like breaking down and crying inside and shit like she did like in Ferrex if she had been there. Now, in terms of Vel, Sartha, the rebel leader. That's again, I think that's interesting. And like, I was looking forward. We talked about this last week. I was looking forward to seeing what was going on with the rebellion and getting more information to work with that. Like how big are they, right? Like how structured are they? How organized are they? Like, are they a ragtag crew? Like, are they friggin', are they like really legitimate? Are they mercenaries? Like, what's the deal? And so that was interesting. It was interesting to see like, the flip side of like, I love how they went from the Imperial meeting right to the rebellion people, and everything and whatnot. It was sort of an interesting dichotomy. And I also going back to like your first question, Cyber, I think it's interesting too, the fact that that Luthen even has to like pay Cassian as a mercenary to do this, right? You know what I mean? Like, he knows he has to. Like that Cassian's not down yet. Like he ain't gonna just do this shit for free. So, like again, he's kind of working him. You know what I mean? He knows what he's got to do to make him work, to make him do his thing. And I think if anything, probably his thought process is that the more that he just gets him involved in this process, the more Cassian on his own will buy into the rebellion, right? He just needs to kind of get him in there, get him in the mix, if that makes sense. So, and I agree with you, Stacey. I think that it is interesting and it shows a lot, again, of the weight of Luthen and his leadership and his place in the rebellion, that he can just sort of tell people what he wants to tell them and they just go with it.
Most definitely. All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Totally. All right. So just want to throw it out there. Definitely in that sequence there was definitely a lot of looks that Andor gave that you could see that he was very suspicious of what was going on here. Did everyone else notice that he seemed like he was very suspicious the whole time he was on the ship, even after they landed?
He's suspicious overall.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. I think he's just suspicious of everything in general. I mean, he's for one thing, he's wanted. So, like, I think it's possible that he's the type where he just doesn't trust anybody almost. As far as he's concerned. Yeah, go ahead, CC.
No, I was going to say Andy is alone. You know, he doesn't have really much of a family.
No, and not only that, I don't think he's used to relying on people or people saving it, right? So the fact that Luthen popped up the way he did and whatnot, I think he's kind of wondering what Luthen's deal really is.
Yeah.
Yep, very much so. All right. Yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there because I felt that out of all the times I've seen him, yes, he seems suspicious all the time, but he just seemed extremely suspicious at that moment, I felt.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I think, honestly, Cyber, I think that also plays into the part of the fact that that's part of why he's not the type to be a team member, to join a team or join a cause, right? He is that distrustful. He is that suspicious of not just the people, but even concepts like the rebellion.
Well, let's not forget that he's also wanted for 2 murders, so he's a little bit on edge and paranoid.
True, very true. All right, so after that sequence, that's when we see Mr. Karn again. We go back to him. He is being basically reprimanded along with his 2 other officers there that were in charge of capturing Andor before he escaped with Luthen. And we see that whole little sequence there. It shows him and he's like kind of standing there taking it. He's not really saying anything, but you can see on his face that he's like, feels like he's like completely let them down. But at the same time, he's infuriated and he doesn't know what to do with himself. Basically, he's still trying to fill that void that that he hasn't been able to fill. Basically, and you kind of get that expression throughout his face. And I kind of like that interaction with the other 2 guys. There, the one guy in the middle is like, "I didn't do anything. I shouldn't be punished for this." And I think that's absolutely it. But he still was there, so he's guilty by association. So after that happens, then it pops back over to Aldhani. And Andor has now officially met with Val, and they are basically walking towards the encampment where the rest of the crew for this cause is going on. And basically, as they're walking, he starts to ask like questions, stuff like that. And she really doesn't give much answers, but at the same time, she kind of gives like answers back that are like, well, you're going to do what I say because I said so. You're going to follow this and follow that. And don't say anything else and say it like this and stuff like that. Basically kind of like what Luthen did to her, saying that Cassian was going to be a part of this. So, they have that kind of like nice little conversation. And then as they're walking, a couple TIE fighters pop up and they kind of hide and hide from it. But they see these 2 TIE fighters pop by, which was really cool. And the scenery in the sequence was really amazing. It looked beautiful there. It looked awesome. And I thought that whole little sequence there was really fun. So after that happens, after they walk to they start walking towards the camp and have that conversation. Basically, that's when it pops up a couple of the crewmen there by a rock. One of them has fallen asleep. The other one's like, basically goes and wakes him up. Basically says, we're going to have to tell Val that you fell asleep and, you're the one that's got to tell her. I'm not going to be the one to tell her. And stuff like that. And basically they're going to have that little bit of a conversation. And that's when we see them walking down from the mountain. And that's when Andor basically gets to the camp where all the rest of the crew people are. That's a part of this plan to whatever plan that they're planning on. So before we get more into that, let's talk a little bit about that walk with Andor and Val, the conversation with Karn, him being reprimanded and so forth. So what were your guys' thoughts on that? What did you think of that whole scene with Karn, how he acted? Do you feel there's more to Karn than meets the eye? Do you feel there's more to that sequence than just him being reprimanded? And what was your thoughts on the kind of the introduction of Andor to Val and their kind of conversation and how, she kind of treated him and kind of how he, with his suspicions, were asking all those questions? Starting with you, Jeff.
Well, I mean, basically, and I just want to also point out, too, I kind of left this out before, just that with Deidre, I left out that she does actually mention, upon hearing the report on the mess at Ferrex, that she potentially sees something going on here that could be going on that we're not catching, that's underneath, underlying, and that being like this could be the formation of some kind of rebellion, like operation, which of course, basically, her major, I guess, is Partagas, essentially, thinks he's making nothing to do about nothing, doesn't really care, whatever, kind of shuts her down. I found that interesting. I did. It kind of reminded me of Cyril, right, with his boss in the first episode. Very similar. So, anyways, as far as again, the Rebel Alliance, and basically the, I guess,
I threw him off with a question.
I got threw off. Yeah. What part?
Sorry.
Cyber, I'm sorry. Exactly what part were you talking about exactly?
The interaction with the termination part when he was terminated.
Karn, the Karn part, and the walking with Val part in Andor.
Okay. I see. Now, basically, essentially, this is where he basically is like, this is where you're talking about with Val, where she's kind of questioning him about the whole Cassian deal.
No. When Val and Cassian are walking towards the crew, when they're going to where the crew is, we're not that far yet. The crew, they're walking towards the crew. The Imperial, the TIE fighters pop up. Karn and the Imperial officers being reprimanded.
Okay, I see.
No asking questions, Stacy, anymore.
Obviously not. Wait, let me ask a question. Are they being reprimanded or being terminated?
I thought they were being reprimanded.
Okay.
Well, either way, basically, what I basically took from it essentially was that, again, I think that what we're finding, and I'm not a huge Star Wars knowledgeable person, but what I'm noticing, what I believe in this series is that we're getting a very different view of the Imperial forces in terms of them actually reflecting them as individuals and displaying them as having contrasted opinions, different views, different opinions on things. They're not monolithic anymore, right? They're not of one mind, right? You know what I'm saying? And at that point, we've seen before in old Star Wars films, situations where people have screwed up, right? And Darth Vader's killed them and shit like that and whatnot, right? We've seen that. That's one thing. But it's another thing to actually have dialogue, right? Where there's actually a problem. And we actually hear discussions and things being talked out amongst Imperial forces and whatnot, right? Or reprimanded, like vocally, At that point, I just feel like, if anything, it continues and connects to this, to me, in general, across the span of the series, this dynamic of there being different mentalities and mindsets and drives and goals and ambitions and reasons for wanting to do what they're doing with the Imperial forces, why they're there, what they're about, what their objectives are, how they view everything that they're doing, right? And at that point, I think it's kind of interesting because it really wasn't Karn's fault what went down on Ferrex at all. You can't blame Karn, right? I mean, he wasn't in charge, right? Cyril was. You know what I mean? And if anything, Karn tried to freaking keep it together on Ferrex. He was trying to keep shit get together and whatnot and tell Cyril, what to do and how to try to advise him and whatnot and everything. he seemed to be like know what was going on and whatnot, and be somewhat prepared for things that were happening. So, if anything, I think that it displays a sort of disorganization for the first time in a way in the Empire, right? In their structure, in their forces, where there is misinformation here and there. There are like, different sides of stories and whatnot, right? Conflicted, opinions and versions of things that occur, if anything, right? To where, again, nothing's monolithic. It's not straightforward and direct like it usually is, all black and white. And so at that point, I just basically think that it's interesting to actually see, in my opinion, them actually fucking up and like blaming Karn for something where if you were on the ground and saw what happened, I don't know if somebody lied about what happened or who actually wrote the report. I'm assuming since Cyril was the commanding officer, that would have been his responsibility, right? To write the report of what actually went down on the ground. Who the hell knows what he wrote, right? I mean, the dude pissed his pants during it, I mean, he was like hiding in the corner. So, and for all we know, like, he may have wrote his version of the story is probably that like he took on the whole shit or whatever by himself and blames Karn. I don't know. No, I'm just saying, I'm joking, but it's interesting to me to see this type of, and I must imagine that like hardcore Star Wars fans must be digging this stuff, this different like look, this different view. Like, I think it's really interesting. It really is for them to go in this direction. I like the way that they're actually showing us the Imperial forces like this. I'm really enjoying it. I am. And now, as far as you also were asking me about with Cassian,
when him and Val are walking towards the crew.
Yes, I thought that was interesting. I guess just from a standpoint of, the fact that Cassian's in this kind of weird situation that he's almost kind of forced into in a way. He is on the run, right? I mean, he almost had no choice but to go with Luthen. And at that point, I think we all know, Stacey's pointed out, you pointed out, he's very skeptical of everything. And he doesn't know these people he's about to meet. I think he's probably kind of like, kind of pessimistic about them, if anything, too. Like, wondering what their motives are. Right? Like what they're about, what she's about. You know what I mean? And she's feeling him out. Right? I mean, I'd have to imagine that if I was a rebel that was like down for the cause and I was told by my boss that he brought in some dude to join an operation like this to pay him as a mercenary, like he's not even a rebel, I'd be pretty suspicious about that. I'd be a little, not only suspicious, I'd also be kind of like this. I'd feel kind of disrespected in a way, almost like insulted. If that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, hey, here I am. I'm a rebel. I ain't getting paid shit.
Very true. Very true. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people that would feel that way. They feel either suspicious or they feel upset or like betrayed. Or, just like you said, most definitely, I could totally see that happening.
Like contempt, almost, like this guy's a fraud.
Yes, most certainly. All right. Thank you. Stacey, same question. Cassian and Val's conversation as they're walking towards the crew, and the sequence with Karn being either reprimanded or being fired.
He looks like someone who's like been fired for the first time, going through everything in his head. When it looked like both of them were like, both of the other two guys were trying to defend themselves, he was just kind of like, I can't believe this is happening to me. Like, I don't even know who the guy in the middle is. Where did he come from? Was he the commanding officer above Karn?
Are you talking about the gentleman in the middle of them?
Yeah.
So Cyril was the very one on the very far right, and then
yeah, he's the gung ho one. Yeah, who's the one in the middle?
I don't remember who he is, but I'm assuming that's what he is. That he's a part of that group. Because if I remember correctly, that the episode, I think it was second episode where they're introduced Karn. I think he was in that room with them at the headquarters of Metro or whatever they call it. And I think he was a part of that conversation when they were getting together ready to go after Cassian. So I think he is a part of like that higher up group.
Okay, because I thought he was the commanding officer that was going on a business trip and told Karn to leave the whole situation alone. So I thought that's who that was for a minute. Now I'm gonna have to go back and find out who this guy is, because he was like, I'm nowhere involved in this. So I was thinking he was the commanding officer, and I was just thinking, oh my God, this guy's getting fired on his vacation. He was actually off and nowhere around. So I just felt kind of bad for him, even though, you know, Karn's supposed to be, I guess, the antagonist in this. But yeah, I felt like he was just trying to just process it. It was too much for him to handle, especially somebody who's not about defeat, not about, you know, losing at all. Like he's I mean, as you watch the story later on, you'll see why he's really not a person that likes to be defeated. He doesn't like to lose at all. Like, he has a lot riding on it, and he's just trying to, where the other two just kind of seem like, I can get a job doing something else. But, you know, Karn just didn't look like he was ready to give up yet. The walk sequence, oh my God, I think I got lost in the whole scenery. I don't know where that was, Ireland or wherever, but that's where I was the whole time. So I wasn't even paying attention to the full dialogue of what was going on. I just saw the green, the mountain, everything, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna paint this. This is all I was thinking about. And the only part that caught my attention was, I mean, I know he was looking for more clarification from Val, and I know she was kind of still standoffish as usual, but I think she kind of earned his trust when he was like, hold on, and he heard the TIE fighters coming. So I think that was kind of like, you know, he, like a little sense of her understanding, hey, this guy could have my back, because he did notice that and he caught on to it when I wasn't catching on to it. So when they managed to hide from it, that was where you kind of noticed when they were going over the mountain, like they were going down, you can feel a little bit of her relaxing the sphincter, so to speak. So yeah, I think she kind of lightened up a little bit, because, you know, of course, when she goes for bat form, she kind of goes a lot like it was actually Luthen that was talking.
Most definitely. Yeah, I totally can see that. Yeah, and the scenery was beautiful and amazing. Oh my gosh. They actually filmed all of this over in the United Kingdom. So it could have been a part of Ireland. It could have been a part of Scotland, Wales, who knows? But it was filmed, the whole season was filmed over in the United Kingdom. So yeah, they got a lot of great, beautiful landscapes over there. So it was very mesmerizing, and that whole countryside there, wherever they actually filmed it at. Yeah, I was in awe too. Very well done.
Awesome place to hike.
Very much so. Yes. So thank you. All right. So before they meet the crew, there was actually a sequence with the female Imperial officer there that we were introduced to at the beginning of the scene to Coruscant. She actually is with another one of the Imperial officers, and they have discovered a little bit more about that box that we have seen in prior episodes that Andor was had in his possession. That what Luthen is basically was asking for in the last episode. And so they got some more information on it, and the lady's like, ooh, I got to tell this to, you know, the superiors and stuff like that. So I want you to go and tell them about this and that. We have enough info on it, basically, to use this to go and grab it, basically. And so the officer basically leaves to do that. So once that happens, then it goes back to the Coruscant again, and we see Luthen heading back, and he's in his ship, and we see him go into the back of his ship, and he gets into basically like this room, and he changes into a completely different disguise that is not what he looks like when he's talking to Val or to Cassian. And so he puts on like this wig and this interesting thing, and he's got all this kind of look going on. You're kind of like, ooh, who's he disguising himself as? Or is the look that he's doing with Cassian and Val, is that a disguise? So it's kind of interesting that he gets into this garb and stuff like that while he's going to Coruscant. And so when he gets to Coruscant, we learn a little bit more, but after that sequence, it goes back to that's when Val and Andor end up at the camp finally, and that's where he meets the rest of the crew, and they kind of, of course, have their thoughts and doubts on him, as we learn on a little bit later. So let's see here. All right, so basically, they finally get to the encampment, like I said. And so that kind of happens. They at first they're kind of like, what's going on here? Like, Andor gets introduced to all the different other crew members there, and then it bounces back to that female Imperial officer again, and she's going to talk to the one officer who was reprimanding or firing Karn and the other guys, and she basically says, "Oh, did my associate give you this report to basically tell to the superior officer so that we can go and confiscate this, because that's what we're looking for?" And basically that officer says, "No, because I declared it not necessary and that this is not, worthy of taking care of. And, I declined the person that you had sent." He's like, "Oh, so are you declining me again, basically?" And he's like, "Yes, I'm declining again." She's like, "Oh, okay, I'm going to go to such and such officer then." He's like, "Well, good luck with that and making your career go up." And she's like, "This is not about my career," basically. And basically it leaves them from there. All right, so let's talk a little bit about those two sequences there. So what were you guys' thoughts on the, basically the introduction to the crew with Andor? What was your thoughts on Luthen changing into that disguise on a ship before he lands on Coruscant? And what were your thoughts of that sequence with that Imperial officer not getting her way and kind of like having to go out of the, to go above his head and stuff like that? What was your thoughts on that sequence and how that other Imperial officer acted, how she acted? And do you think there's more there than, that we'll probably learn about later on and so forth? Starting with you, Jeff.
Well, I mean, basically, I think that, we already kind of knew that probably, Luthen had to be playing both sides to some level in order to be able to have the access to the type of information and knowledge and everything and whatnot that he's got, right? Either he had spies or something in the Empire, or contacts or something or whatever, or a connection with maybe somebody higher up or something like that, which obviously he does. Basically, it doesn't surprise me. It didn't surprise me at all that he like legit has other alternate like selves and everything and like personas and puts on costumes and whatnot, because he's a spy type dude. Like, like this, there are espionage angles to the series, right? In a way, there are. That's part of the series and whatnot that I actually enjoy. And at that point, I essentially just found it, if anything, cool to see Stellan Skarsgård display how excellent an actor he is. Like doing that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, putting on a wig and a different outfit and whatnot, and portraying a different character all of a sudden, in order to, gain information and have a meeting with, essentially a Imperial traitor, that's a part of the rebellion. And so it's nice to be illuminated in terms of like sort of what's going on, like with Luthen, how where his connections lay, how he gets his information, how they go about it, how it works, what his sources are, who he's connected to, how deep it goes. You know, I mean, how much influence or how much, you know, how much, how deep into the empire is he? How dug in is he in terms of info, in terms of his sources, his connections? How far does it go? You know what I mean? Like, how deep is it? And basically, I'd say that I think it's interesting that it doesn't surprise me at all that I sort of figured on my own that probably I wondered, like, how the hell does the rebellion finance their operations? Like, where does the money come from? Like, I thought maybe it was possible that maybe Luthen was rich or something like that. Like, he was just some, like, wealthy, super wealthy type of dude, you know what I mean, or whatever, like, you know, silver spoon or whatever, you know. Maybe he was, like, the big, you know, funder of, like, the cause, you know what I mean? Like, maybe he was the big financial backer. Yeah, maybe he is. Maybe he's a big part of it. But it doesn't surprise me at all that they would need money, that they would need to find other sources of, you know, funding with their operations and whatnot and everything, right? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, the empire has so much control, right, on over everything. You know, of the markets, of business, of, like, you know, of trade, right? And at that point, it's probably not easy to go out and find sources of funding if you're the rebellion, right? You know, I mean, on top of the fact, it's probably not easy to buy gear and equipment and weapons and all that kind of stuff to some extent. Of course, there's black market stuff out there, but probably not easy. It's an uphill battle, and so basically, in terms of I apologize, Ember. Where do we go right after the meeting between Mon and Luthen?
That hasn't happened yet. No,
we didn't.
No, we didn't get to that point yet. No. It was so no. We saw Luthen change into disguise.
Yeah.
And then we had the little sequence with the two Imperial guards that are talking to each other about the box, and she's going to go over his head to the higher up about it because he has declined her request.
Yes, and you're referring to, once again, to Deidre.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I didn't think she was that important.
Who is Deidre?
Deidre
is that her first name?
Yeah, Deidre.
Oh, that's her first name. Okay.
She's the short blonde hair, really serious Imperial, I guess supervisor, or I forget what her actual role is. She wasn't a part of that scene?
Yeah, she was part of that scene, yes.
Yeah. No, again,
I just know her as Grandy.
Oh, okay.
Well, her name's Deidre Miro, a supervisor for the Imperial Security Bureau, played by Denise Go.
Okay. Well, that I didn't know, but
okay.
Okay, so basically, again, it's the same sort of dynamic or dichotomy where, again, it sort of, to me, traces back to earlier episodes where you have this sort of, I guess, not arguments, but like you have these different opinions and these different viewpoints and these different mindsets about these events that are occurring, right? In terms of how different how different officers or parts of the Imperial are handling things and viewing situations. You know what I mean? And how they go about their business, their mindsets. And at that point, I think it's interesting that there's sort of like to me, a connection again between Cyril and Deidre, where just like with Cyril wanting to go out on his own, right, to pursue something, that was not necessarily within his purview, Deidre's doing the same thing, right? Like, she doesn't have to do this. This is not even within her job. She's outside of the scope of her actual role, I believe, at this point. She's just digging and like continuing to dig on this whole, like, you know, her itch or her gut feeling that there's something deeper going on what happened on Ferrix. It's not as simple as just the 2 guards being killed, you know, by Cassidy Andor. And the fact that, again, you're seeing like these arguments or these, like, you know, sort of like, you know, disagreements amongst these Imperial officers and whatnot and everything, where instead of like Darth Vader just like, you know, strangling somebody with the Force over some shit, they're actually arguing over things vocally, like, you know what I mean, with points and like facts and like reasons and whatnot and everything. So I think that's interesting. It's a different thing. It's a different vibe. Instead of just brutal, you know, pure brutal force, or like pure freaking, like, you know, if you do something wrong, you're dead. You know, argue with me, die. They're actually like, you know, we've got different, like, you know, levels of officers and whatnot in the Imperial forces, flex the muscles on each other and having disagreements about certain situations. And so at that point, again, I enjoyed the fact that I find that connection between Cyril and her. I do. I like that angle. And I want to see how that's going to continue to play out across the span of the series. You know, like, I mean, I wonder, where does this leave Cyril? Like, if she, you know, I mean, if she's going to be stepping in here now, and she's really, she's digging in deeper than he was, right? Then where does Cyril end up? So we'll see, I guess, right? And I apologize again, Cyber. What was your other question?
You answered it all. You're good.
Excellent. I feel great now.
All right. Stacy, same questions.
Okay, so when I started watching these two, I felt like, of course, they just introduced a new set of players into this, because I feel like the Clar and the other player, they're kind of out of their reach right now. So, of course, they're bumbling. Let's see, how can we describe what happened on Ferrix? I mean, it's basically going to go up to the higher ups. And the box, like you said before, because you had asked me about the significance of the box and what role it plays. And I was just like, it's just a box. But apparently this box is a little bit more. So I think that's what Deirdre, I guess we're calling her Deirdre. She kind of, she's onto something, you know, because it's an important item. So I figure she knows that this is her sector. So she's in control of this sector. No one else. The other guy, he's in control of his sectors or what he needs to do. So the fact that she kind of has a gut, and they always say, you know, go with your gut, it's probably because she can kind of put this together in her head and see, because a lot of times when it comes to certain people, and, you know, they can put together a scenario in their head that's going to lead them to different, that's the magic of being a genius. And I kind of don't want to say that too much about her yet, but I feel like that's the realm where she's going. And as far as the dynamic, you know, that they have, I'm sure you can't really compare these two to Darth Vader, because Darth Vader, he just had power and his whole thing was power. These two don't really have powers. You know, their power is just thinking. That's all they can grasp at, is just knowledge. Darth Vader doesn't have to have a college education. These two look like they went to Ivy League colleges, you know? So, I feel like there's going to be a bit of a power play between the two of them about this situation, because she's seeing something, but he can't really see it because he's on a different sector. the whole Lutheran thing, wow, it kind of creeped me out a little bit when he went from Lutheran to this. I don't even know what to describe. When the wig came on and then the whole different persona came on, I was just like, okay, so we're really a spy. And I kind of figured it out when he put the thing on. I mean, he was going into an area where, of course, you have to have this whole look to yourself because it's Corazon. You know what I mean? You can't just show up on Corazon looking like he does now, all scratched up, all head dangled clothes. I mean, look at his whole entire outfit. I like looked at him from head to toe. He looked very GQ when he got off of there. So it explains a lot. It explains why he's just so willfully to be like 200,000, or take this is 50,000. Like it explains everything. Like he's the deep. It's like that old school movie with I think it was Snoop Dogg. Or no, not Snoop Dogg. Lawrence Fishburne, Deep Undercover, way back in the days. He's really deep undercover, I would say, and that's just an interesting take on it, and it excites people to see how deep he is into it. He's not just a rebel spot, like he's a power player.
100%. Yeah, totally. Like I mentioned before, I think there's so much more to Luthen that we are aware of, and that there's so many different facets to him. And this is just one of them. So I think as the episodes go along, we're going to learn more and more about him and just how much he is invested into the eventual, stealing of the Death Star, plans to be able to destroy that first Death Star that the Imperial Army has created. So yeah, most definitely, I think that's 100% true. All right. Thank you. So, like I said, Andor gets introduced to the crew, as I was mentioned before. And then after that happens, and they basically kind of, talk a little bit. It's not very much to that sequence. It's like kind of like, oh, why is he here? Blah, blah, blah kind of deal. And, she kind of explains, and then it kind of pops away. We go back to Karn. He's in an elevator going up to somewhere. And then we get introduced to him going to meet his mother, which I thought was kind of interesting. And I think that sequence is kind of funny there because like he goes, he knocks the door and he's like, hello, mother. And then she kind of like starts to kind of cry, but then slaps him and then cries some more, and like puts her face into his chest and like hugging him. And I think that's kind of interesting. He kind of, there's definitely some interesting relationship there with his mother. And then of course she's like, mind your own business, neighbor person, which was really funny, I thought. And I thought that was kind of an interesting kind of other take on who Karn is. And so after that, then we go back to the crew again on Aldhani. And this is the actual scene. Sorry, guys. This is the actual scene where they discuss, what's Andor doing there? Why is it there? What we're going to do with him? How does he play into what we're doing the next 3 days types of deal? And they kind of all are kind of giving their input into what they think. And, basically Val is like saying, he's going to be a part of it. Just got to deal with it. And that's just what we're going to do. We need more people. We lost a person, et cetera, et cetera. And basically that's, kind of what that discussion ends up leading to. Then we go back to Luthen on Coruscant. And there he basically, in his disguise, he comes into contact with this senator. This lady, I forget what her name is, a blonde gal, kind of short hair. You can tell she's very senator, politician looking. And she comes in and they kind of start going around the store saying, oh, we're going to get you we could get, here's a couple things that you could use for certain things in your house or your gallery or something like that, kind of going around. And then her and Luthen go into the back. And then that's where, yeah, Mon Mothma, thank you. And that's where he's, basically they have kind of a little convo where nobody else is present. basically going, are you still into this play? Are you still a part of this plan? Are you still being able to get us the money? She basically explains that she's having a hard time transferring the credits, and that she has to do it in a different way because it's getting harder to do the original way she was doing it. And basically he leaves it at, okay, well, I just want to make sure you're still a part of it and still doing it, and we can go forward. And that's pretty much how I'll leave it. And she kind of leaves, and she's kind of like stressed out about it as you see her leave and go in her spaceship, going back to wherever she's going. And so, basically she leaves after having a conversation with Luthen, and we see that kind of interesting kind of like thoughts, and like she seems to be like exhaling really bad, like she felt threatened or she felt scared there. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So after it pans away from her, we go back to Aldhani, and another person shows up to the crew, and happens to be I don't remember his name either. I don't recall them saying his name when he arrives, but he seems to be a part of the Imperial people. It looks like that he's a part of that, but he's actually helping the rebels. And he basically is told, that this new person has been added to with this, and he, of course, says, "Why wasn't I told about this? This is only happening in 3 days. We have 3 days to prepare for this and all this stuff, and and I should be." I'm putting my life on the line here, and I should be told this and stuff like that. And basically, sharing his frustrations, and Val basically, says the same thing, because she's basically being, forced by Luthen to take this Cassian guy in. And, she kind of understands, and this guy's, his frustration and stuff like that, not being told with only 3 days to, before this mission is supposed to take place. So I think that was kind of interesting. A little situation there, and basically this, questions about all these things and about Andor and so forth. So before we move on past that, what are you guys' thoughts on Karn meeting his mom and his relationship there with his mom? What are you guys' thoughts on, Luthen and his discussion with the senator? And do you think the senator is evil? Do you think there's more to her than meets the eye? Do you think she's a part of the plan? Do you think she's a good guy? And what did you think about this new other person being introduced to the crew, this other Imperial officer guy that's a part of the plan, and his thoughts on Andor being a part of it? What are your guys' thoughts on that whole little section? Starting with you, Jeff.
Well, as far as Mon Martha goes, I mean, I think that I'm not a Star Wars expert, but I'm pretty positive that that she's known outside of the series. She's been in something. Either she was in Rogue One or something, or some. I think she's been a part of the Star Wars universe before. Maybe, I don't know if they may be in books or something like that. I have no idea. But if I understand correctly, I believe that she is pretty much like, a long time rebel. Like, I mean, she's been down, with the rebellion for a minute. So I would assume that she's, who she says she is, and she's not like a double agent.
She actually is in Return of the Jedi. She's the head of the Rebel Alliance at the time.
There you go. Okay, so yeah, at that point, I didn't get any gist off of her that like there's anything dubious about her. I don't think Luthen would trust her if she was like, if she was at all sketchy, right? He doesn't seem like the type that would do business with people like that. At that point, essentially, I would say that, as far as like the serial part goes and whatnot, with the mom and everything, I don't really have much to say about that. It didn't really do anything for me, or do anything for his character to me, or tell me anything really about him. It was kind of like an aside. But as far as Mon and Luthen and that dynamic, and basically, I guess, what her role is, or, I mean, which of course we basically know. I mean, I guess, gathers information and probably, if anything, probably is able to like kind of, let Luthen know ahead of time before operations happen. I mean, who knows? Maybe she's the one that told them that, Luthen, that this money was going to be there, this payroll or whatever and whatnot. They're going to be trying to, to steal, right? That could have been her. Who knows? At that point, the only thing I really took from it, I guess, would have just been that essentially, besides again, Skarsgård being excellent, basically, it's mentioned, I believe, unless I'm moving ahead, I believe, is this part of the scene, doesn't she sort of mention that they're hurting for money?
No.
No? Okay.
No, she's saying it's hard to move the money.
Oh, to move the money. Okay. So there you go. That's another obstacle, right? When you're the rebellion, right? Moving money. You know what I mean? Getting money from place to place, from person to person. How that even works, I have no idea. Like in a global empire, universal empire, but essentially, she wants to bring someone new, into their, like, I guess sort of into their, what would be like their kind of higher level circle of the rebellion. And it would make sense to me that, that Luthen would also be pessimistic of things like that. Right. Like, of anybody new kind of popping up. And I mean, and to me, if anything, I guess what that indicates to me is that this relationship with Mon and Luthen has been going on for a long time. This has been going on for a minute. I don't know how long she's been a part of the Empire, but I'm assuming it's been a long time. I mean, she seems like she's, she's got to be like in her 50s, I would think. But, potentially something like that, right?
No. She was more like in her 50s in Return of the Jedi. So this is supposed to be like 20 plus years earlier. So no, I think she's supposed to be like 30s.
Okay. So yeah, basically at that point, I mean, again, I don't really have much to say about it, just besides the fact that, again, interesting to see new characters being a part of the show. Interesting to see the subterfuge, I guess the espionage, the spy, the aspect of the series being played out. It's interesting to see how the rebellion works, I guess, how they're able to do what they do, like the structure, how they're able to finance things, how they're able to, how their operations work. And, besides that, I just would, I guess, point out to backtrack just for 1 second that I did notice in the beginning of the episode something that, I guess, I don't know if this is going to be important at all or whatever, but Luthen gives Cassian that necklace, right, as like a down payment or whatever and whatnot for the job. And I believe that stone or whatever that's in that necklace doesn't have something to do with like the construction of a lightsaber.
I suppose it could be a crystal that they put into a lightsaber, yes, but I'm not 100% sure because I never heard of Luthen before this series, so I don't know if that's going to be a part of that or not, but it could be.
Yeah, I don't know either. I just noticed that. Well, obviously it's valuable. That's obvious. And okay, it's a Kyber crystal. Rare stones are attuned to the Force and an essential part of a lightsaber, as well as the Death Star's planet-destroying super laser. Okay, so there you go. So it is pretty valuable and rare. So I think it's interesting that I'm not trying to backtrack too much, but I think it's interesting that Luthen would have possession of something like that. You know what I mean? To be able to give Cassian like that. Again, it just shows a lot about Luthen and his resources, right? Like, that he has these things like on hand. But yeah, as far as the actual dynamic, you know, with what we see, again with Karn, I mean, it did, you know, nothing with Karn and the mom really interests me. And as far as like, you know, the aspect with us actually finally finding out how it is that Luthen's able to actually sort of, you know, get information, you know, for his operations and whatnot and everything. I found that, you know, I even as like not a huge Star Wars fan, I think it's really cool that they actually have a actor, a character in the series that's from the actual original Star Wars films.
Yes, true. Very much so. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Okay, why am I hitting myself real bad? Anyways, so yeah, I definitely agree that that's an interesting thought on the crystal that he gave him at the beginning for down payment towards the mission, which was at the very beginning of the episode. And you know, when I saw it, it made me think of you know, a lightsaber crystal. That was what I was thinking, and that he had some sort of kind of ties or connection, maybe to a Jedi. So it'll be interesting to see just what that plays out to, like you were saying, most definitely. Stacy, same questions.
I think that remember when we were watching, I forgot what show, maybe it was Obi-Wan, where they were on that planet and they were building some lightsabers. I think maybe that's where he was at one point. Maybe that'll shoot back. I forgot what planet he was on when he did that, but I think that might have some play into it. But we're talking about meeting the team, right? The first one is meeting the team. When Andor finally meets the seven.
Yeah, so basically talking.
That's the scene.
Several scenes actually. So we're talking a little bit about how he met them, and then moves on to the Luthen meeting the senator, and then also the sequence where they meet the other Imperial Guard character that comes on the writer, and basically is introduced to Andor as well.
Okay, so I would say for the meeting of all of the characters, you can tell the different personalities within them. I think Keem stood out a little bit because he's just the most optimistic of the whole crew. And when everybody just kind of looked at Andor like, who are you? Why are you here? He was the only one that was like, glad to have you here. Because at least he's one of the characters to probably see the light in all of this, and having another player and all of that, although he was the one that was sleeping, and so we don't know how much he takes this seriously. So we don't know what's going to happen to him throughout the story because of his thought process and stuff. Cinta, who looks or seems more like she is a deep soldier in this whole thing, and the medic who was helping him out and noticed, that he got the laser burn. I think she's starting, for just that split second, you could tell their whole impression of him and how they're reacting to him. And I think she kind of trusts him now that she notices, he's got that burn on his arm. The other two, they're still a little bit skeptical about him. So you could see he's going to have to build a lot of trust with their character. And then for the guy that shows up, I was just looking at the fact that he pulled up on that bike, and I was just like, nothing has changed. It took me back to, I think, is it the Return of the Jedi? I believe it was Return of the Jedi when they brought out those bikes and the whole chase scene. But I think he was supposed to be the main character. I think he was supposed to do what Andor is doing. So when they brought Andor in, I think that's what he's mad about, is the fact that they lost trust in him and lost faith that he was going to actually do the role that he was supposed to do. So I think that's where a little bit of jealousy and just frustrations coming in. So that's my take on that. He has a strong-willed personality, and I think they'll probably work good together. They'll probably be like the last man standing, kind of. Um, Karn's departure, oh my God, the man is so sad and depressing. It was like he just literally hung his head. It was the most uh depressing walk of shame I've ever seen in my life. Like you could just dress him up in like some full on lingerie, and that is the whole scene all the way there. He hung his head, and worse enough, you open up the door to your mother smacking you in the face. I mean, come on, let's just add insult to injury. Which kind of explains a little bit of their whole relationship. Like you could tell she's probably a mom that pushes her son to be the best, but also still, I think it was just that maybe it's just the two of them. I don't know if dad's going to be involved in this. I thought maybe he's raised by a single mom, which kind of means something to his character. But you could tell by the way she interacted with the neighbor that also explains her character. She's a tough mom. She's a tough lady. Like, mind your own business. Like, this is between me and my son. Even though I'm standing out in a public place smacking the shit out of my son because he just whatever, either he's terminated or he's on suspension. But you could tell that she's also loving, but that there's a little bit of dysfunction somewhere, just a little bit, that she actually had to do that for him. So that's just probably just an explanation, and it also explains that he's not out of the game yet. He's got to go home and recharge his battery. Remember, he's still processing this whole situation. So he's going to go home. He's probably going to get some tough love by his mom, and then he's going to go back out and do what he needs to do. So it's kind of like saying, don't count this character out yet. And for the senator, oh man, she came in like Obama's wife. That's the way I looked at her, like a, what do you call it? Even though she's a senator, but she came in the car alone, or the vehicle that she came in on, her presence, the fact that she was wearing all white, and just you notice how they are writing these characters and how she is versus how she was in Return of the Jedi. You know, she's all elegant in this one, and so you wouldn't think that that's her role. And when they when the driver was like, oh no, I can't afford this, then like she's spending a lot of money in that store. And that also explains a lot about Lutheran's money. Like, because he's selling all of these artifacts for a gigantic amount, which he's got a little bit of deep pockets to help support the rebellion. So that's awesome that he's using their own money against them. When they go to the back room, and you see, like, at first I wasn't sure what this whole scene was about. I thought maybe it was just explaining exactly where he got his money from and why he has so much money and why he's dressed like that. Especially the wig. The wig's still throwing me off. It's a great wig, but it's still throwing me off. But for the whole interaction in the back room, that's where you're like, wow, this is like super spy stuff. Like, definitely she is like a big hitter, but she is on his side and she's a part of the rebellion. So, I mean, you could see, because we've all seen all the Jedi movies and Return of the Jedi, New Hope and all that. So we know exactly why the Imperial failed, because they had so many big hitters in spies in there just ready to take them down. They had moles, they had everything. And it's kind of interesting to now see why it kind of exploded from the inside out. You know what I mean? Where do they get these plans from? How do they destroy the Death Star? No one else. How do they figure out how to destroy it. There's no way to destroy it from the outside. You got to go on the inside. So basically, obviously, there was somebody on the inside that figured it out. So I think that's interesting to kind of look at it from this standpoint. So kudos to this scene. Maybe I'm looking very deeply into it because that's pretty much how I always look at things. But it's a good way of them writing this character in, and it gets the audience and, you know, the big Star Wars fan intrigued. If you're not intrigued, you should be, and something's wrong with you.
Well, thank you. Yes, I would agree that, you know, Star Wars is a great storyline that Lucas started back in the 70s. I mean, the little short stories that he started with that went into and becoming New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, I mean, spanned 6 more films after that, plus several offshoots. So, I mean, this is an amazing world that even many other writers have created their own added on to canon stuff. So, I mean, it's amazing what, you know, this is and how, you know, intricate it has become. And like, you know, Jeff was saying before with, you know, how he likes how they're showing more of the Imperial, the people sides and how they really act and stuff like that. That goes into that again. It's showing all the different intricacies into this universe. So I totally agree. All right, thank you. So after, you know, that new guy is approached and asked about Andor, we go once again back to the senator. She has arrived home, and I believe the gentleman there is her husband, or I think that's her husband. They don't like actually say it's her husband, but that's what I'm assuming he is. He's there and tells her that they're having guests over, and she's kind of like, I don't remember that. He's like, yeah, I told you about it a while ago, and she's like, oh, and she's not really too thrilled about it. And then, you know, he basically says who's coming, and then she's kind of like, I don't like these people. And he's still like, well, I mean, I could call off, but then he's like, do I really want to? And I thought that interaction was really interesting because that they had the husband kind of play like this kind of like jerky character. And I like that. It was very realistic to like a real rich person's type of, I feel, person's kind of like homestead, like how they're, you know, their mate or their, you know, spouse would be. And so I thought that was very, very nicely done. And I thought it was interesting. And I love how she ends up like saying, you know, don't let this happen again, basically, and walks away, which was really cool. And I thought that was just a really interesting little thing. And how she kind of explains, you know, these people are the ones that are causing all these evil things to happen in our world and stuff like that. And I thought that was kind of an interesting nod to showing that, you know, Mon Mothma that's kind of leading her to becoming that rebellion captain that she becomes, the leader of the resistance. So I think that's a nice little nod to that. And so after that, that's when we head back to Andor on Aldhani. And basically they go over the plans of what's going to happen, you know, in a couple days, like what's going to go down, how they're going to steal certain things, how they're going to get there, and who's going to be doing what and which. And so they kind of discuss that a little bit. Don't really go into huge detail, but they discuss basically what's going on and kind of what they're going to do and how each one has a specific part that they have to play in and what they're going to do. And then as that happens, then we go back to Coruscant again, where that Imperial Guard, who we talked to, Deidre, and the other Imperial officer that declined her, and then the upper Imperial Guard, and they basically have a conversation about, you know, what she has found. And, you know, basically the other guard that she went to go over this guard's head basically says, well, you know, I see what you're saying. I see where you're going. And I appreciate you. That's why you're here. That's why we, you know, listen to you. This is, you know, but what you're talking about, we're not going to go with that. I'm putting the kibosh on it now. And basically that's where he leaves it out, basically, once again, declining her again. And I thought that was kind of interesting that they put a kibosh on that. So I think that box is going to play even further down the line as we get farther into this series. And so after that, that's when we go back to Andor again. And it's basically come across the day that's ready to go. And the episode ends. So final thoughts on these last scenes, folks. Here, what were your guys' thoughts on that? What did you think about that combo between the 3 Imperial officers? What were your thoughts on the conversation with the senator and her husband? And what were your thoughts of, basically the crew getting ready and then the crew being officially set to go and about to go? What were you guys' thoughts on that? Starting with you, Jeff.
Well, you're as far as the husband goes. I mean, you're right. That is the husband. And his name is, I guess, Perrin Fartha. I do my best with these freaking Star Wars names, man. Some of them are pretty freaking deep. The way they're spelled is very interesting too. I guess if you're in the Star Wars universe, you have your name cannot be spelled in a normal way. It has to be all fucking weird and all over the place. So you got to add weird letters into your name. But no, he's basically he's like one of the Shield dudes essentially. Like the way he kind of comes off, you know what I mean? He's an asshole, right? And I guess he's probably like a cover, if anything, right? You know what I mean? She's probably he's kind of part of her deal. You know what I mean? If anything, I don't even know how tangible their dynamic is. You know what I'm saying? I don't think he likes her. I'm saying I don't think she likes him very much personally, is my deal. You know what I'm saying? And that's why, again, what I meant when I kind of said that, I think she's really hardcore rebellion, rebel. She's not, she'll do whatever she's got to do, sort of, you know what I mean? To further the cause. And she's also intelligent and strategic, right? And kind of knows what she's doing. And what I took out of that scene essentially was that, basically, during this dinner, these Imperial people, I almost get the sense that they kind of already have an idea that she's not exactly above board, maybe, right? Maybe she's not, she's not as diehard, Imperial, as they are, kind of, in a way. Maybe they're suspicious a little bit of her, almost. But that maybe she's in a position of power or at a level of stature, right? To where she's not untouchable, but you're not going to just blatantly question her or run your mouth at her, right? You know what I mean? If anything. So I thought it was interesting that, essentially, not only do we discover that, Luthen has this high level inside, person in the Imperial forces, but that on top of that, and they meet, on top of that, they legitimately actually sit down with Imperial forces. You know what I mean? And whatnot, and engage with them and whatnot, right? As a part of, I guess, almost the farce. And at that point, basically, I just took from it that throughout the conversation, she mentions something about the planet, I guess, I don't know, Gorman or something like that or whatever. The shipping lanes, being cut off or being shut down or something like that or whatever. And, that could possibly cause starvation to the civilization there on the planet or whatever. Now, I think that if I understand correctly from the lore or whatever, or from the backstory or from what later goes on going into Rogue One, this plays into it, right? I believe, because I think that ultimately down the road, this sort of activity, whether it's Gorman or some other planet or whatever, this type of shit, cutting off shipping lanes and starving friggin' people, right? Innocent people and whatnot and everything, is a type of stuff that ultimately ends up being what causes, Mon, right? essentially to, go all out, right, against Palpatine and like, the cause, and sort of almost really launch the rebellion, if anything, right? If that makes sense, I guess, if I understand things correctly. Again, as an amateur Star Wars, person. So I'm learning as I go here. I am putting research into this, so I'm studying. I'm trying to learn the backstory. I'm trying to understand. And so I think that's key. That, again, that's really cool that they're connecting. They're adding these connections, right? Like, it's not just a prequel to Rogue One. They're actually, and hopefully we'll see more of this, and hopefully we'll all catch it, or like, we'll realize it when it occurs, right? I'm sure there's probably stuff that happened in this episode that I don't even understand that has something to do with the Star Wars lore or something, right? That I don't even get. But I think it's interesting that they are making these connections like this to Rogue One, right? To where we have something to work with that leads to Rogue One. I like that they're establishing that to some extent. Something concrete to like kind of, make that deep connection that this is a prequel. And then in terms of, basically Mon's spot, I just think it's interesting that she's got to have some balls of steel, man, because I mean, she's literally like living in the hornet's nest every day of her life. You know what I'm saying? Like, surrounded by the enemy, like legit, like every single day. And that's got to be intense, man. You know what I mean? Like, seriously. Like, you can't fuck around at that point. You got to legit, like, keep things real. Like, you can't, you can't give off the wrong vibes. You cannot, like, misportray yourself. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Too far. Or, I mean, again, this is the friggin' Empire here, or you will get killed. Like, somebody will kill you real quick. Which I'm sure we'll probably see stuff like that down the road in the series. But, I guess sort of going back a little bit as far as like the Rebels go on Coruscant and whatnot. I did sort of, I guess, from that, I just want to point out that I did take that basically their target is like some, like, I guess, huge fortified garrison or something like that or whatever they're going to be taking on. Did they visualize it? Did they actually show? I didn't notice it. Did they have like a picture or anything or whatever of where they're going to go?
No,
they didn't. Okay,
no, they did not.
I'm interested. That'll be interesting to see, like, what this structure is or whatever and whatnot that they're going to be actually trying to get into, to break into the vault or whatever and whatnot and steal this payroll or whatever it is. That I found really interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes down. It really builds a lot of excitement up, I think, for me for episode 5. Know that we're going to have a heist, right? Like, we're going to have an actual operation. You know what I mean? And whatnot. See how that's going to go down. You know what I mean? And I guess, like, what kind of cohesion we're going to end up having between Cassian and these already, like, these rebels that already know each other. They've worked together before, So besides that, essentially, I guess, like, to wrap up the, the rest of the, the episode, I basically just would say that, again, like I said, Stellan Skarsgård so far, excellent.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, most definitely. Stellan Skarsgård is amazing in anything he does. Even the smallest little tidbit of a role, he is phenomenal. He is just amazing. And I mean, he never disappoints. I mean, his small little role in Deep Blue Sea was amazing. His character, in the Marvel franchise, as Eric has been fantastic. I mean, he's just a fun actor that you always enjoy whenever you see him. Most definitely. All right, Stacy. Same questions and final thoughts on the episode.
Is Skarsgård related to the other one from that vampire movie? with the other Skarsgård?
Yeah, that's his sons.
Oh,
So
okay.
Alexander
All right.
Skarsgård
Well,
is his son. The guy that has been playing Pennywise, Bill Skarsgård, that's his son. He's got several sons.
oh, okay. All right. That was always my favorite character in that show, anyways.
Talk about True
But
Blood,
yeah,
right?
he is a very good actor. So True Blood, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
True Blood,
Yeah.
baby. True Blood. Hell yeah, baby. Good ass show.
Yeah. So you could see there's a lot of talent in that entire family. Because when I saw him come on the screen, I was like, okay, this is gonna be good. You know. So for the senator, when she stepped into the scene, it was kind of like you could see another weird interaction with them, and you could tell from the husband, Perrin, I think that's his name, Perrin. He's kind of like bred from the Imperial. Like you could tell he thought he just cares about dinner parties and designer things and looking pretty and all that other stuff. So you could tell why, or you could see why they have this little riff going on. He was just like, didn't care about her feelings, didn't care about the fact that these people do not like her. She addressed it. Like basically, you were inviting my enemies to my dinner table, and he didn't even try to say something like, well, maybe you could win them over. It wasn't even like he tried to show that side. He was just like, well, if you invite, it just seems like he didn't really care. And like she's walking away angry. And the first thing he says is, so I heard a rumor that you got me a present. And I was just like, yeah, I would have responded the same way she did. Well, yeah, it's going back. Why am I doing all of this if you can't meet me halfway? So it seems like there's a weird dynamic in their marriage. Like he's just there, like he's a sugar baby. That's my understanding to it. He's not even there for any cause whatsoever but his own. For the plan, it seemed like there's a little bit of doubt in that plan because Andor keeps questioning everything that they do. Like, are you going to be able to make it out in time? Are you going to be able to get to this point, and you're going to get on what, and it's going to go how fast? So I'm excited to see how this plan works out because Andor it seems like he doesn't think it's going to work out himself. So that's an interesting play on that. And I love the fact that they're setting up for something interesting to happen, especially with this dinner party. What could possibly happen at this dinner party with her worst enemies? She's a spy. You know what I mean? So let's take that into consideration. And for the plan, yeah, let's see what happens with that. That can blow up in our face. And like I said, there's got to be somebody that's going to die. And in this whole, one of the crew members or something's going to happen because it doesn't sound too much like it's foolproof. The whole Deirdre versus, I don't even remember that guy's name. I just call him the black guy. So, the only reason why I was kind of intrigued with her is because she seems so serious and he just looks like I kind of chalk this up to like when I'm in the middle of what the three Imperial guards or Imperial people. It was like two kids fighting and they had to bring their dad into it. And the black guy won, but he also like did this little look like, how kids, when one kid wins, he has to turn around and just kind of like say, ha ha, I won that fight. And then she's got that look on her face like, oh, I just lost. But in reality, we all kind of know that she's right. There's more to it. And she's going to get her ha ha moment. I told you so. So, that one, that kind of portion right there, that wasn't leading up to anything. We already know what's going to happen. She's going to have her moment, and that guy is going to eat his words. But in the ending, when Andor was having his meal, he had that look on his face where he was just like, you guys want me to do what? And he looked kind of skeptical, like he wasn't, like he has to do all of this and learn all of this in like, I don't know, like overnight. So he has to like try to stay awake to read the whole, I don't even know what it is, but it looked like a lot of work. That's all I know. And so you could just see the look on his face where it was just like, I don't know if I could do this. What did I get myself into? So that opens up a very interesting, um, to pull the characters and pull the readers, or not the readers, but the watchers in. So this whole episode is going to make you want to watch the next one, because that's all that's important. Because if you watch an episode and you're like, I already know what's going to happen, and that's usually what happens with me. Like I always like watch a show and I'm like, I already know what's going to happen. Like with the whole Imperial people, like you kind of already know what's going to happen with them, but you don't know what Karn's role is going to be, because now he's sidelined. So why are we still seeing him? Why don't we just send him to bed, put him down, and it's done? But you could tell there's something else going on. So that's the reason why I would just end up watching the next episode. Even though the Imperial people just seem like, okay, they're just going to go on some wild goose chase, and then they're going to end up getting their butt kicked and something's going to blow up, and then that's the end of it. But you could tell there's something coming. And so I'm looking forward to that.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I think overall, I think that this episode was a solid episode. Thought there was a lot of information that packed into the 45 minutes it was. And I definitely thought we got some really great, Stellan Skarsgård time. We got some, introduction to these new people that'll be a part of this plan that, which we know it's going to be a crazy plan and something bad's going to happen, most definitely. And it's gonna be interesting to see just how that plan works out. If it works out, if they end up getting that, because I have a feeling it's gonna have to work out to some extent, because this is what is leading up to them getting the Death Star plans to be able to take off the Death Star. So this is all a part of that same Rogue One storyline. So it's gonna be, there's gonna be some bad, there's gonna be some good. No matter what you do there's always gonna be casualties and so forth. And but yeah, most definitely, I think there's a lot to unpack in this episode, and overall I thought it was a good episode. What number would you give it, Jeff, for this episode, 1 through 10?
I'd give it an 8.25. Solid 8.25. I don't think I want to go as high as an 8.5, because I think that probably, if anything, episode 5 will probably be like, 9 level. You know what I mean? If not higher. You know what I mean? Probably. We're gonna have a heist. There's gonna be action and shit. This is more of like Stacey said, this is more of like a setup episode to establish more characters and flush out more, more of the intricacies of like the series, right? What's going on. And and have you having new characters meeting each other and everything and whatnot. Episode 5 is going to be some real shit. They're actually going to do some productive stuff. So at that point, I would give it an 8.25, but it was really solid. It was a good episode. It was entertaining. And I found it interesting. I never found it boring at all. So, so as far as I'm concerned, the whole series has been great so far.
Thank you. Awesome. Stacey, 1 through 10, what would you give it?
So how would we rate 10? Is 10 like, are we talking about scenery? Are we, how do we how do we categorize all of this? Overall,
a little bit of everything.
Yeah, so I'd probably give it, just because Jeff gave it an 8.25, I would give it a 9, because they had everything to look at. You know what I mean? They don't really have much of a love affair going on in this sequence, but that's why I put it at a 9 and not at a 10. But the scenery overall, him being introduced to new characters, the fact that, the spy game is so intricate right now. Like that's what's piquing my interest. It's cool because you're like, I don't know, when he put on the wig and the whole, like, you could see him, like, he changed. It's just kind of like he stood there and just said, I'm Lutheran. And then he took his hands back up and said, no, I'm Lutheran. And then he starts smiling to just go on with this whole new character that he's creating. So it's fascinating to see him work. It really is. I mean, I feel like it's like when you have power actors like this, what is it? Silence of the Lamb. I forgot his name.
Like Jar Jar.
And Jar Jar. But when you have power actors that are playing such good roles and they're able to do this transition between evil and good, it's really unique. So that's why I'm giving it a 9. And the fact that Andor, he's growing. The characters are all growing, and that's an important thing. Whether they're going to be like for Karn, he's growing. And you're going to see probably Deirdre change in a different way too, because this might be out of her element. Like, these people don't leave their little goody two shoes lifestyle. You see how they live outside of that. They probably have a nice apartment. They have, just like how everybody's living. This is the rich side. This is how they live. So they don't go past the rebellions. The rebellions, they're shooting, running, kicking, screaming, fighting, hungry, living out in like beautiful Ireland or Scotland or wherever they're at. So they don't experience anything outside of that unless they're like flying to go look at something, and then they come back and then they go back to their normal lives. So I like the way they're evolving the characters more and more, and they're keeping you interested. You're not sitting there just like, okay, I already figured out what's going to happen, so I'm bored already. So yeah, definitely a 9.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I will definitely give it a 9.5. Not a solid 10 because everyone else gave it an interesting scores. I'll give it a 9.5 just to kind of even it out. And because I thought it was a solid all the way through. Very well done. All right. So that's the end of the episode, folks. And end of this episode review. I want to thank everyone for watching because you guys are all awesome. I want to thank my great panel. They were all very awesome today. And before we venture off into the unknown, Stacey, would you like to plug your podcast?
My podcast is still available on any platform. I am working on my YouTube channel right now. And I'm basically on Instagram. I am on Facebook as Rad Chick. And of course, Twitter. It is some real shit. And yeah. Oh yeah, I'm on TikTok as well. You'll love my TikTok. It's fun. I do more fun things in the morning than at night. So yeah, some real shit podcasts.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely check that out, people. Check out some real shit podcast. Really good stuff. All right. And of course, if you enjoy me on here, definitely check out my solo content under Cyberneticshark. Of course, you'll find me on all the different platforms. You can find me all under that. You can also find a podcast on Anchor of some movie reviews. I've done a few in the past. You can check those out too as well. I just dropped a couple of trailer reactions on my YouTube channel, so definitely check those out as well. And is there anything else you like to mention, Jeff, before we venture out?
I'd just like to mention that StreamYard, you need to get your shit together because I'm really getting irritated with trying to deal with your damn customer service people that just pretend that there's no issues and everything on the platform when there are. Like, do me a favor, all right? I'm not a goddamn idiot, okay? I'm a veteran content creator and whatnot and everything. I'm not a clown. So I think I know when something's wrong on the platform, okay? So do me a favor, StreamYard. The whole deal where you're telling your agents to tell me that there's not even a problem, right? Well, it's not playing, okay? Just to be clear. But other than that, folks, we love all of you. You're all wonderful and awesome. Just as Stacy is wonderful and awesome, a great friend, an awesome creator and whatnot and everything, an awesome guest. And we're very lucky to have her here to help us do the Andor episode reviews. We're sad that Jasmine couldn't join us tonight. We hope you're doing okay, Jazz. And Cyber, as always, brother, killing it with the moderation, baby. Getting after it. Handling your business.
Thank you, sir. All right, folks. So that is it for tonight. We will see you on the next one. Peace.
Well, I'll give this little cookie an hour before we're doing the no pants dance. Time to musk up.
Wow. Never ceases to amaze me.